Good afternoon, and welcome to Lab to Launch, the virtual series for researchers interested in pursuing entrepreneurship. My name is Enrica Ziller, Research Education Programs and Outreach Manager in the Office of Research at the University of Texas at Dallas. As we move through today's session, I invite you to post questions into the chat for our guest speakers to discuss. Here to guide today's conversation and introduce our guest speaker is our host, Brian Chambers. Brian has spent his career working with and investing in venture-backed startups. Currently, he is Vice President of Ventures at Capital Factory and Director of the UT Dallas Seed Fund, where he actively advises students, entrepreneurs, and early-stage ventures, and serves as a member of the entrepreneurship faculty. Brian, the mic is yours.
Thanks so much. It's great to be back. Happy New Year, everyone. It's great to be back hosting the Lab to Launch series. I am extra excited to introduce our guest today, but before I do that, I'd like to help set the stage. As our Vice President of Ventures at Capital Factory, we get the pleasure of working with so many of the great, awesome, and most exciting startups across Texas, especially when it comes to engaging in deep tech because of the defense sector and the defense industry. One of the largely Capital Factory, we have been the most active early stage investors, so we've seen a lot of tech, we've seen a lot of startups, and one of the and while our focus is hyper focused on the booming Texas region, one of our core values at Capital Factory is to always make exceptions for awesome. And that is exactly where this next startup falls, a total exception for awesome. I'm super excited to introduce Dexter Ang, founder and CEO of Pison Technologies, out of perhaps one of the most iconic tech startup hubs in the entire world, especially when it comes to advancing and commercializing technology out of university ecosystems. So Dexter, thank you so much for joining us today. Dexter, again, out of Boston, Massachusetts, founder and CEO of Pison Technologies. Dexter, before we dive right into it, I've got to ask, have you always been into deep tech and some of the hard sciences? Tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, where you grew up, and perhaps the path that led you to being involved with such a deep tech startup.
Thank you, Brian, for the introduction, and it's my great honor and privilege to be invited here by Capital Factory as well as UT Dallas to support the innovation ecosystem. My background's in mechanical engineering at MIT. Undergrad and graduate, I studied media at the Media Lab and at Sloan in the business side. And so my background's always been in technology. I've always loved that side, but at the heart of what I care about is solving problems. And so when I studied college, I wanted to solve problems, and when I graduated, I was honestly just looking for the hardest problem that I could tackle, which at the time was actually in the financial industry and high frequency trading. So I dove in agnostic to the problem set, and then I learned about signal processing and telecom. And then really when I learned about the problem set that is the origin of why Pison was created 4.5 years ago, which was to address people affected by ALS and other neuromuscular conditions. That's when we started the company. And for me, it was really about just trying to solve a particular problem. At least for me, it was affecting a family member of mine, but the problem extends to many other people.
Yeah, and so and Dexter, as I got to know Pison, and even the way that you just described solving the problem for people with ALS and other muscular issues wasn't exactly the way that I've got to know Pison. So if you don't mind, give us the overview of Pison, what you guys are working on today. Pison's got an incredibly big vision to really transform the way we interact and engage with machines. But if you can, walk us through what exactly it is that you guys do at Pison and the types of problems you're solving.
Great. I will describe a little bit about what we do at Pison, what we're all about, and then I can walk through some slides, some intro slides that just are more visual. And so we started the company 4.5 years ago, and the pain point was very narrow and very apparent to me. My mother at the time, 2014 to 15, she was diagnosed with ALS. And ALS, if you are aware of, is a condition that affects people's entire body. The muscular strength deteriorates from a mother. She actually couldn't pick up a fork to feed herself anymore. And then even at a point, she couldn't reach a mouse to even click a button to read any ebooks, which was her favorite activity. And, you know, during that time, I left my job to spend time with her, and it killed me to see the person I love the most dealing with these, what seemed to be rudimentary problems, but they're actually huge because the diminishing of physical capability and then how that corresponds to diminishing of digital capability is an unsolved problem in the world. I just didn't see it that way. I just saw it as my mother's intention to try to live a regular, normal life. And so that problem fascinated me. I met a lot of people affected by ALS, and that was what kept me up at night, every night for many months. Even as my mother, you know, went through her challenges and she passed away after only a year with ALS, I was already on the track to going back to MIT as a graduate student, very committed to understanding what could I do to solve this problem set, and maybe there'd be something in our technology efforts that would have ramifications for the rest of the world as well.
Well, that's awesome. And I really look forward to seeing a couple of the slides as you introduce Pison, and so the rest of the community can also get a bit more familiar with what you're working on. And as I do that, I also want to ask this particular question about how the idea was conceived for Pison. You said that you got involved with the Media Lab at MIT, and I know a little bit about the Media Lab because of its iconic nature, and it's a very, very special place, but many may not know what the MIT Media Lab is. So would you mind sharing perhaps also what is the MIT Media Lab, and how did it play the role in helping you kind of find and discover this next big adventure that you're working on, which is Pison?
MIT is critical to the beginning of this company, critical to who I am as an engineer, as an entrepreneur, because when I was seeking to figure out in which way should I create the company and what are the networks to help me launch this and explore it, because it was going to be hard tech, then I recognized that MIT Network was the right place to tap into. And the Media Lab in particular is a place that has a reputation for being at the forefront of both technology and art, and really pushing the boundaries of the human interaction with our environment and sensors. And so when I was enrolled as an advanced study fellow, I took further classes in that area. And so on the people's wrist, there's actually electricity relating to your brain signal going down to your finger movements and your hand movements. And so we built sensors on the hardware side to sense that information. And then we actually translate into digital signals and then send it to phones, as well as augmented reality devices and robots, to be able to control them and interact with them. And so we're taking biopotential data, which is primarily invisible, and making it visible in the world. We see three major areas that our technology is going to have major ramifications for: robotics, touchless control of UIs and invisible UIs, and then digital health in what we call neural insights. Some of this is on our website, and I'll describe further about one of our use cases for robots. So this is one image of our tech. It is a sensor that's on the wrist, and we can see here, you know, that it's usable and applicable for people who are even wearing gloves because they're holding tools or they're holding other items or their hands are occupied. And we're sending multiple streams of data to be able to capture that stream of information from the hand relating to electricity, as well as the wrist movement from IMU, which is like a gyroscope, and then also from an impedance sensor, which understands the skin to electrode content. So this is just a short video showcasing some of our use cases for search and rescue. And so we've been working with different government officials to be able to manipulate phones, as you see here, dropping waypoints, manipulating phone screens, and then even launching drones and robots simply by the indication of a person moving their hands and arms. And so a lot of this technology has already been built, and we'll be shipping our first version of our product later this year. But we see the intersection of robots being hugely important to the entire world in terms of automation, in terms of getting humans out of harm's way. And then really the interplay of where autonomy is going to hit a bottleneck is actually in the human, because humans are only able to interact with so many different things at so many different times. and to be able to increase the efficiency of that, that's what leads to an entirely new unlocking of capability in the world. So, stop sharing now.
Awesome. So thanks for that background. What an awesome, I mean, unlimited potential this type of technology has as we look to, interface and engage with every type of machine, right? At the end of the day. My question, Dexter, for you is the three big use cases that you just provided. One of them was not solving for ALS. So although that potential might really be there, when did you, were there any kind of major pivots that you worked through at the beginning of your company, and talk to us about the process that you underwent to find and identify product market fit with your earliest customers?
Yeah, definitely. You picked up on what's extremely obvious, is that the company's ambition is a lot different, a lot larger than what it was at the beginning. And so, yes, the problem started out with my mother. It was very small, very targeted. As we created the company, we had a lot of interest from large electronic companies, as well as others. And the first pivot was understanding that what we had started to tackle was possibly huge. This concept of interaction with the entire digital world, the concept that AI is going to transform everything, and what is the human's place in that. I just started to see all these trends converging. And so one of our first investors was Bose, the electronics company. And that's when I started thinking about larger audio-based use cases, as well as IoT. And then ultimately, we have a lot of government customers now, where we saw quite a bit of traction with regards to robots and augmented reality. Part of that was just shown here. So the pivots have really always been pivoting to larger markets, as well as to larger partners. But the heart of what Pison is all about is to solve problems. Problems that relate to quality of life, problems that relate to increasing productivity of people's existing workflows.
That's awesome. I saw what very much looked like some of the iconic Boston Dynamics robots. Was that the case? And are you engaged with Boston Dynamics? Can you share?
Yeah, they are a fantastic company, one of our top partners actually, and so we are one of their preferred value-add partners for incorporating human-machine interfaces to their technology platform, which is an incredible, AI-enabled quadruped robot. We do a lot of work with them, and the use cases that I showed in terms of directing robots to go to different waypoints is, highly value-add for them and for the customers.
That's awesome. So as you discovered this, you're in the MIT Media Lab, wrapping up your graduate work at MIT. You've identified this set of were there existing patents, or were they was it new intellectual property that you began to work on as you started to build this company?
Yeah, so you asked a wonderful question relating to what could be called product differentiation, as well as how we build our technology in a unique manner, and what is so hard about what we do. Number one, the concept of using the body as a sensor system, input and output, is obviously very popular especially among large electronic companies. What we've discovered is a blue ocean opportunity in the neural interface space, which first of all is in a very early innings. We might be in the first inning of how neural interfaces would transform the world. So you obviously have companies like Neuralink, Control Labs, who are building very novel things, where Pison is seeing opportunity where we will be differentiating according to sensing hand signals at the top of the wrist. We have 5 patents, 15 pending already related to our signal acquisition and applicability. And then also the fact that we work with our customers on end-to-end applications. We do not offer just a generic agnostic technology platform that they do all the work on. We actually go so far to understand the human factors that most impact their ability to get their job done, and then we dynamically change their workflows. And so servicing and providing applications is those are 2 of the 4 areas that I believe are going to be important in neural interfaces. The other two are related to hardware and signal processing, which we're also unique in. But ultimately, there's a blue ocean opportunity where all the companies in this space are going to generate a lot of value and capture a lot of value over time.
That's great. Thanks for that. The background of the 5 patents that you mentioned, did any of them exist before you had officially kind of formed the company, and did they exist in partnership with MIT and the Media Lab?
Yeah, great. So when we started the company in 2016 in the fall, then the first funding that I received for my co-founder was actually from MIT. I was a graduate student, as I mentioned, and there is a program called Sandbox, which is one of the best programs I've ever learned about, which is really almost like no strings attached funding for students or even other members of the MIT community to investigate almost anything they want. And so Pison was, which the company wasn't called Pison obviously at that time, but the concept I pitched, we won, $25,000, which was the top amount any student could win out of a couple hundred entrants. And when I had that money, then I told them I was going to incorporate the company. I was going to file a patent, and so that's exactly what I did at that time. We gathered all of our patents after the fact. Some of the landscape was already established, but some of it's grown, and so we see lots of opportunity to be able to create and leverage IP in this space.
Wow. So from the Sandbox, which perhaps might be akin to the Big Idea competition and some of the other programs that we run at the UT Dallas, inside the UT Dallas ecosystem. That's so awesome that allowed you to begin to take the next steps as serving as the basis of validation and some initial resources to help take that next step. But what other role might you share with us? What other roles has the MIT ecosystem played in helping set up Pison for success beyond that first $25,000, beyond the discovery of the nature of the problem? How else has the ecosystem really served Pison to advance and commercialize your technology?
Yeah, great. The MIT ecosystem was incredibly integral to every aspect of the founding of Pison. Obviously, my background, me tapping into the MIT Newark as a Sloan student and at the Media Lab and the Advanced Study Program. So almost every investor I met came through that network directly or indirectly. Every sort of professor that gave me advice came through that network. A lot of our early employees or interns also came from the MIT and Harvard network. So I have ultimately, as the company went through different stages, then that's not a network I spend a lot of time with right now, given where we are as a company of nearly 40 people. However, it was essential for me at that time, and I could say the first year and a half, even our introduction to Bose as an investor came through MIT.
That's fantastic. You mentioned something. I want to spend a whole segment of this talking about investors, because ultimately people solving really hard problems with really deep tech need investors. It's such a critical part to a company's commercialization and path to impact. So I want to talk about that, but removing, we'll get to that in 1 second. So you've been able to leverage and be incredibly resourceful to leverage the ecosystem of MIT, the networks of MIT, and really Boston, Harvard, et cetera. How else, who was involved in the earliest stages of your business, helping you cross that first critical chasm, which might be finding those first customers, really validating your business model, and getting what I might consider your first institutional quality or institutional grade checks? $25,000 doesn't get you very far, and $50,000 checks don't get you get you super far. Who was it that was a part of your team? Can you point to? Was it mentors? Was it advisors? Was it professors? Friends? Who helped you in the earliest stages of your business cross that major chasm and help you break out to your first customers, your product market fit?
Yeah, sure. So there's maybe 2 parts I will describe there, which is, you do ask where the initial batch of investors come from. That's worth addressing directly. The second one is who have been instrumental to helping us break out into the most important concept, which is product market fit. And so the first question about investors, they did literally come from the MIT network. So, mutual fund managers, we have a surgeon who was an MIT, master's, and then, I met him, and that came actually through the MIT Sandbox program as a connection. And so we had raised a couple $1 million within the first year or so, just from meeting nice and willing people to jump on board, just on this entire concept that there was a large pain point for this human-machine interaction world that was going to leverage a new class of data that we were capturing with biopotentials on the surface of skin. And I think that carried over into what Bose saw, which was an introduction through the MIT Angel Network now 3 years ago, and then they invested more than a year and a half ago. And that enthusiasm that they had was realizing that they had tried to solve the pain point that we're trying to do, actually, with gesture control, touchless control, themselves for quite a long time. And then they recognized that we were one of the best in the world, and they want to partner with us. And so that's how that happened. And that was quite a big stepping stone for the company at the time, because then the responsibility to interact with a corporate VC, as well as being able to add value to their business units. And that's a model that I've taken into a number of our investors as well, who do represent individually or corporately with other parties.
So Dexter, you said that it took you almost 3 years from being introduced, or about a year and a half later, to win, an engagement or a deal or venture funding from Bose. Were they your very first investor?
They were our first institutional investor.
Got it. So
we had a number of angel investors, and some of them represented companies like Oculus and Samsung as well. Though, I wasn't seeking institutional investors until we were ready for it as a company, and Bose came at the right time.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. So can you share with us what that process was like to engage with angels? How difficult was it? What do you felt like if you were reflecting back on the experience, ready from you had this idea, you're organizing your research, your initial resources, you need to go get more. How difficult was it to engage with those first angel investors, and reflecting back, what was critical to that, being able to win those first angel investors? Was there anything that stuck out?
Yeah, that's great. I'd say it's there's no secret, it's very hard. And so the most important thing is just to be as transparent and clear about why you care about what you care about. And I was extremely clear about what I was trying to do. I didn't yet know exactly how our technology was going to play out, and exactly the types of demand signals that I would see over the years, which now there are many. But at the time, it was just this general, enthusiasm to know that here's a pain point. I've discovered it. I'm going to let you be on the journey. Are you interested? And people who trusted me from my past in the financial industry were willing to easily go all in. The people from MIT network, once they got to know me and vet my networks, then they could join in. But I definitely can say that reputation and personal credibility matters a great deal in raising investor dollars of any type, and that was very important.
So Dexter, can you share how much angel capital did you raise in the first, in that first, we'll call that first segment of your business before you were able to switch the dial and begin to work with what we'll call professional investors or institutional investors? Right, and I mostly define that for the audience. I mostly define that as people who invest and manage their own money versus people who do this on behalf of, they manage other people's money, right? Those are very different processes. So how much did you raise as you were working with angels, the beginning of that process, and how long did that take?
Yes, that's right. We raised over a sequence of time, and total from our seed round, it was around $5 million, and then now we have further investment beyond that time frame. That was what Bose was involved in over a year and a half ago. And so there's been further investment since that. But yeah, angels were the first couple of years of that for a couple million of dollars. And it's grown since then. It's really as this company grows and steps up, then the types of investors that I spend time with also grows and steps up as well.
What's the biggest difference that you can share about working with angel investors versus the institutional investors that now consume your time? Fundamentally, what's kind of, as you reflect back, many of the audience members that might be tuning in and listening today are really at the beginning stages of commercializing their idea. They might be winning the types of resources that that you won at like $25,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 grants from UT Dallas to help catalyze the business in its most initial forms. But they've got to, and some of them are raising angel investment. But how do you know you're really ready for institutional investment? And what are the biggest differences that you could give coaching to others since you've been able to do it?
Yes. Institutional investment will come with much more scrutiny and much higher expectations in terms of how the company is being run and managed. And angel investors, I might have an interaction with a person once a year or not even once a year. And so, however, I can call upon our institutional investors all the time to support Pison's journey in terms of fundraising, obviously, but also in terms of helping us strategically with connections or advice or connections to other portfolio companies. And so there's a big difference in terms of the needs that I have, but also the needs that they have, because obviously I have to have a game plan for how our technology rollout will be impacting and affecting their portfolios. So, yeah.
And Dexter, as you think about the types of customers you worked with today, you mentioned a couple of them, Bose and Boston Dynamics. How do you see the landscape of human-machine interaction evolving? These are obviously, these customers, I wouldn't say Bose makes a obvious sense today. Boston Dynamics, I think, does, but help the audience understand where's the landscape going. There are some early types of beta customers, if you will, today. Who are the customers of tomorrow for Pison?
That's great. Good question. And so the way I'll answer it is the way that our customers at Google answer it, which is that wearables will be as important as phones in the future. And so what does that mean exactly? It means that like the way that we interface with the central device in our lives, you could look back, 10, 12 years ago, that wasn't that way. And so what we can, though, all recognize is that over the last couple of years, algorithms and prediction engines from how we watch Netflix or how we click on ads or social media, that is 100x in terms of our changing in our experiences. And you can imagine that in 10 years, this will be perfected in algorithms at a generalized basis for humans, as well as on a personalized basis for each one of us. And then that there will be increasing demand for more sensory input streams to feed into those algorithms. To increase the quality of our lives, but also just because the demand signals from these corporates will be needed to increase, how the productivity of each of us is coming. So imagine everything we've ever thought about that day or tried to do would allow us to have easier life, given that there is a AI engine behind it, manipulating, warping, and thinking about what is our next need as humans. So I think we're going to just fall into that trend at Pison, which is already unfolding.
That's awesome. Dexter, I want to ask you something, and maybe if hopefully something comes to mind, but I want to ask you for perhaps the bold, maybe 10+ year prediction as you look out. You just talked about some of it, but give us something that maybe is maybe helps hit home and helps the audience really understand the critical nature to the problem that you're solving in 10 or in 15 or in 20 years from now. what type of bold prediction can you make because of this technology? What type of world are we going to be living in? What type of problems are we going to eradicate? What comes to mind? Is there a bold prediction you can make because you are living in, working in the future? So as you look out 10 or 20 years, what type of prediction can you make for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I like to simply be humble and state what other people say, which is what Elon Musk said about neural interfaces, which is that they're completely underappreciated, and how the brain interacts with electronics is going to be completely transformed over the years, and how for us at Pison, how our nerve signals are going to be unlocked in terms of releasing this class of data that the world hasn't used before, and we'll be at the center of it. So I think what we'll see is that wearables as well as AI is going to be less about health and much more about everything else, which is understanding the intention of us as humans. And that ultimately allows us to resonate with each other much more easily and frequently. And then there's a greater sense that our lives can be improved with electronic systems that are more closely melded into what we're trying to accomplish on a given day-by-day basis.
Super cool. I think we've got a couple of questions in the queue. Enrica, are you going to be able to share some of those questions with us? I suspect they're all directed at Dexter, but I'll be happy to weigh in if any of them are directed at me.
Sure. I think there's a couple kind of buried within one comment, so I'll read it off. We face a similar decision about whether to focus on the assistive potential of our feet-operated HCI device versus the broader game and VR market. With HCI devices, there are so many potential markets. How do you suggest going about nailing down your entry market? Do you still plan to include the ALS market, or is that too distracting and not as interesting to investors?
Yeah, so and I skipped over it earlier, didn't have the opportunity to address it directly. ALS is a mission strategy for Pison. We do work with the ALS Association as well as with the National Science Foundation, who is a big funder of us at the company. And what we're seeing is the opportunity to be able to disrupt how digital health and disease management happens with ALS progression. For example, we have the ability to capture how neuromuscular signals decrease over a longitudinal period, which is the first set of data that would ever be available to correlate against a lot of the gold standards in that space. And so we do a lot of that work. We're not commercializing it. And so there's a big difference between research that we do at the company to push the art of the possible and then what we would be shipping publicly. And so that's part of where this questioner might be thinking about is there's so many demand signals, how do we sort it out? And I would say that there's a very high bar to be able to ship something publicly as a product, which Pison will be doing later this year. And that is really looking at validation of demand signals. And so for us, we saw across our markets, people are willing to buy today our technology in large quantities. And that would be integrated solutions for phones. And so that's what we'll be shipping out, the ability to touchlessly interact with phones by the end of the year. And so what I would recommend for anybody starting the company is think about product market fit, this concept in terms of validation and having concrete trigger points that would allow you to know that if you ship something today or whenever you would ship something, there will be people who are ready to buy it and with some scale economics that have no dependency.
Awesome, thanks, Dexter. Enrica, do we have another question in the queue?
We do not.
Dexter, I wanted to ask, you have a unique set of investors from angels to corporates to conventional VCs. And can you talk a little bit about the difference? I think this, corporate VCs, I think corporate ventures at an all-time high and getting, even more aggressive because every startup seems to be out to eat the lunch of every big corporate these days. And that can happen fast. But talk about the difference working with a corporate VC versus a conventional VC. Is there a key difference that has come to mind that you found with the culture of your board or your company?
Yeah, there's quite a different motivation for every single person who wants to part ways with money. They're going to be marrying you for the lifetime of the company, right? So they should be thinking about it that way. And so I remember an investor told me, like as a CEO, I'm going to be almost like in a Catholic wedding. I'm going to have a lot of marriages. So, and I didn't quite understand that for a long time, but it helped me recognize that a person putting money in will be doing it forever, for the lifetime of the company, until there's some sort of liquidation event. And so financially focused VCs, their interest is only financial. Corporate VCs, their interests are twofold, also benefiting their company, usually their business unit. And so seeing that alignment, and it's mutual, because if Pison is going to be, as a company, launching something with a commercial partner, that's actually mutually beneficial for us at the same time. And so really understanding what I need as a company at this point in time and what the other party needs at this point in time is really important. If I could say anything at this point in time as advice, I would say financial VCs are actually very beneficial to most companies. And I would heavily weight that. However, in the early stages, it would have to be in combination with clear product direction. If without clear product direction, there won't be a financial VC investment. Yeah.
And but it's not just those that you work with, and it's not just your angels. Can you share about who some of your other investors are and the kind of the nature of how that has been impactful to your business?
Yeah, we have a strategic investor called InQtel, which is the U.S. government run VC, which is highly selective in choosing the best-in-class companies that have dual-purpose technologies that can disrupt multiple industries with multiple large markets as their customer bases. And the amount of diligence and the amount of support that they provide us is huge. So they do provide us with revenue. They provide us also with new customers, and they provide us also with a level of know-how to their portfolio companies that has been hugely impactful to us. So we've benefited a great deal from them.
That's awesome. So Dexter, as you look out into 2021, what are you most excited about? We just came, I'll make this a two-part question. We just came off of a wild year, one where, our nation in particular, we faced many crises simultaneously. The world seemed to completely stop, but go even faster at the same time. Interesting dynamic. How did the pandemic affect your business? Did it affect your business at all? And as you look forward into 2021, what are you most excited about? And we'll go ahead and leave it there.
Yeah, thank you very much. 2020 was an unusual year. I think every year is going to be an unusual. It's never the same. And so one thing I learned when I was taking care of my mother when she had ALS was that every day was different. And ultimately to have no expectations of what tomorrow would bring. So it's just as a CEO, I have to just be thinking ahead always, and I can't ever complain about what's going on today. Pison has gained, and Pison has also run into challenges like every single startup. And so one thing that a customer once asked me was, Dexter, I see you all over the place. You travel to see him. He was in Florida, and then also we are working with a number of commercial partners and government partners and running a crazy hard tech company. How do you do it? Like, how do you have the time for me or for other things? And I just was reminded of in the book of Luke in the Bible about shameless boldness, about knocking and the door will open to you. And so I think that any CEO, any entrepreneur just has to keep going and be hard charging, and the world will bend to your will over time. Not that I'm trying to say I have influence on the world, but if you're going in the right direction and people also are aligned to it, then results will happen naturally. And that's what has happened every single year at the company, and we expect to grow a great deal this year as well.
Yeah, and as you look forward into 2021, is there anything, a particular collaboration, a implementation, a new customer, a financing round? Where is your time, energy focused on for 2021? I know it's in a zillion places as CEO, but what are you most excited about in the back of your mind?
Yeah, we have a number of goals this year. Some of them relate to our customer growth and launching our first product with some of our customers relating to, as I mentioned, touchless phone control. That's going to be a very big deal. That's the world's first dedicated end-to-end application for touchlessly controlling any device in the world, but especially something so ubiquitous as phones. And then also the fact that our technology advancement is getting to the place where all of our parties and our team members are extremely excited about it. So I'm just a coach in this company, on this boat, and then I'm bringing on people who are excited about this vision together and getting it to the point where we have a lot of people who are bought in now.
It's fantastic, Dexter. We appreciate your time so much. Unless there are any more questions in the queue, we will say our farewells. We look forward to watching Pison from a distance, maybe me having a front seat at that show. We're very, very excited about about the work that you're doing, and look forward to watching its commercialization potential change and impact all our lives. Keep up the hard work.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, UT Dallas, for the opportunity.
Thank you both for sharing your time and giving us some unique insight into taking research from academia to biotech. And audience, thank you for joining us today. We also hope to see you again on February 22nd when Claire Aldridge, Associate Vice President of Technology Commercialization at UT Southwestern, will discuss the benefits and strategies for private corporations and startups to collaborate with research institutions. For more information, visit utd.link/lab-to-launch-info. And to view a full list of Office of Research events, including these coming up in the next week or so, please visit research.utdallas.edu. Thank you and have a nice afternoon, everyone.